Hello and welcome to Talk Truth. My name is Corey Huntsberger. I've got my father, Alan Huntsberger, in the studio. Dad, we're going to start off with our foundational verse. The earth and
Good.
everything in it, the world and the woods and its inhabitants belong to the Lord, for he laid its foundation on the seas and established it on the rivers. Psalm 24, 1 and 2. Sorry, Dad, I had to add the woods in there because everything belongs to the Lord, right? Even the woods.
Yeah, everything does. And it's all his. And he has a plan for it. And sometimes man thinks they can
Fiddle.
ignore God's plan, and they have a plan of their own. And they think, oh, we're going to do my plan. But they're walking right into a trap, basically, that the enemy has set out for them. And, they got to get back to God. Everybody's got to get back to God. That's the, wake up, everybody. You got to get back to God, because right now, what can I tell you?
Well, Alan, we're gonna have an interesting conversation. It's gonna go all over the map, but we're gonna talk a little bit about our Nova Scotia friends. A little bit something crazy is going on there in Nova Scotia, and I gotta tell you something, my friends. You're not allowed to go into the woods would be a real problem for Alan, right, Dad?
Okay.
In Alberta,
Hey,
we got signs
hey,
of like beware of bears. Alan just keeps walking. He doesn't care
hey,
about the bears.
hey, see, this is totally off the subject. But I got
Uh,
to say this because I'm very proud of our Blue Jays, our baseball team, the Blue Jays. They beat Colorado the other day, 20-1.
Okay.
They made history, my friend.
So I'm so glad you're into the Blue Jays. That's awesome. Let's get on with our guest, Leighton Grey. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Great to be on the program. Nice to see both of you again.
Nice to see you
So did
too.
you
And I
ever
quickly,
play baseball, Leighton?
No, baseball was not part of my upbringing. I was my mother was of German extraction, so I played Fußball, also known as soccer, as a kid, and then really got heavy into hockey and played some football. But hockey started to dominate my sporting life from about the age of 12 years old when I got into elite levels playing hockey. That pretty much took over everything. And then nowadays, all I do is I lift a lot of weights in my home gym. But I still go on the ice with my boys when they practice, so it's still a love of my life. But yeah, no, I never was a baseball player, though I do admire the athleticism of these players. I remember the first time I saw a game, I saw the Blue Jays play and they were warming up. And, television really doesn't do these guys justice. To see how far they can actually throw a baseball is truly astonishing. And to hit a home run, how far that ball has to travel in the ballpark. You don't realize it when you're watching the game on television, how big the stadium is, how far that ball has to travel. So these guys really are amazing athletes. So I had a whole new admiration for them when I actually got to see a game at Skydome.
Well, I actually went to the World Series when the Blue Jays were in the World Series in the early '90s, and of course they won it, the World Series,
Yeah, twice in
and
a
my
row.
and my U.S. friends were not happy that the cup of the World Series went to Canada. It's kind of like we're trying to get the Stanley Cup in hockey back to Canada because it's not very good always down in Florida all the
Yeah,
time.
it seems like a curse. Interestingly, we had the World Series in Canada and the Stanley Cup in Canada in 1993, and it's neither have ever come back. So let's hope. Let's keep hoping.
you're lucky you got to
Oh,
play hockey. I was the only Canadian boy that was not allowed to play hockey because the practices and games were on Sundays.
Yeah.
Sunday mornings. The dad was, preaching every Sunday, and I had to be in church. So I went into baseball, but I always
Well,
wanted
I
to.
had to go to church. I went to church too. I went to school on Saturdays. I went to German school on Saturdays, which was basically learning Luther's catechism in German. Genau gut, ja, ja.
Well, Leighton, I quickly wanted to say before we get on to our topic, thank you so much for moderating the Talk Truth by Election Forum. We've been talking to the candidates, and they absolutely loved it. You were very fair. They loved your questions. They enjoyed the debate. How'd you think the night went?
Oh, I just thought it was really joyful to be there, to be a part of it. There was a real energy in the room. God was there. We had actually a pretty good audience there in person, which was great. It's a pity that Pierre Polivier sort of took a pass on it because he had to go knocking on doors, even though he was right in Tollfield. That was the only downside, but no, it was a real pleasure to see everyone and shake some hands and it was just an exciting event. You guys just did a brilliant job of bringing it off.
Leighton, we wanted to talk about Nova Scotia a little bit. Let's go to the
Yeah.
premiere of Nova Scotia.
Effective 4 p.m. today, we're telling Nova Scotians, stay out of the woods. We are restricting travel and activities that really aren't necessary for most of us. Hiking, camping, fishing, and the use of vehicles in the woods are not permitted. Trail systems through woods are off limits. Camping is allowed, but only in official campgrounds. The fine for violating any of these bans is the same as the fine for the ban on burning, $25,000.
Well, I don't know about you, but $25,000 sounds like a lot. Leighton, what do you think about this kind of? By the way, it gives me PTSD, COVID PTSD. It just has that kind of vibe. I'm not saying like it's not dry in Nova Scotia and people shouldn't be careful, but it just feels weird. Does it feel weird to you?
Yes and no. I think that it's weird in the sense that it goes against the grain of what our country is actually all about. But it's very consistent, unfortunately, with the progression that we've seen, the really the denigration of freedom and the concept of fundamental rights in Canada, particularly since the COVID-19 pandemic. And I get into this argument with people all the time about, whether Canada is a Christian country and whether freedom is the product of Judeo-Christian morality in this country. But the proof's in the pudding, guys. So O Canada, which actually mentions God, as you know, was written by a Frenchman, a Quebecer, in 1880. But the first English translation was actually by a doctor in Toronto named Richardson. And these are the original lyrics to O Canada in English. O Canada, our fathers' land of old, thy brow is crowned with leaves of red and gold. Beneath the shade of the holy cross, thy children own their birth. No stains thy glorious annals gloss, since valor shield thy hearth. Almighty God, on thee we call. Defend our rights, forfend this nation's thrall. Defend our rights, forfend this nation's thrall. So what does the national anthem say? It's a call to Canadians to call upon God, right? Who is the provider of our rights. Thrall is another word, old English word for slavery. And the idea is if we lose sight of God, who is the provisioner of rights, just as of everything in the earth, just as Alan's open verse says, if we lose sight of that and we allow governments, if we allow men to control our freedoms, our rights, then we will descend into slavery. And this is precisely what is happening in Canada today. And we have three very recent examples. One are the Leach and Barber persecutions. I won't call them prosecutions because they are persecutions where, the government of Ontario is persecuting them because they had the audacity to try and actually exercise their freedom of expression, their freedom of association, their freedom of peaceful assembly. It's important to note at the Freedom Convoy, that we didn't have looting like we've had in the United States. We didn't have occupation of private or public property. We didn't have broken windows. We didn't have burning cars. We didn't have people being assaulted or hurt, at least not until the government showed up with their thugs to break it all up. And yet here we have, 7 and 9 year sentences being sought. More recently, what do we see? Well, we see Sean Foyt, who is an American pastor who expresses his love of God in his music, his freedom of expression. So these are the pillars of our freedoms that are bestowed upon us by God. But now he goes to Montreal, and a local government, a woke mayor from Montreal, says he can't perform there unless he gets a permit from the city. Well, since when does the local mayor, it was a local authority, have the ability to deny someone their freedom of expression in this country? It got so bad that 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 pastor's tour bus was actually nearly rammed in Manitoba by a crazy person. And when he got back to United States, he literally kissed the soil. He kissed the soil and the freedom of it when he got back to the US. Now he is going to come back to Canada. He's got some new tour dates. To her credit, Danielle Smith has said, come to Alberta. You can perform on the steps of our legislature. So that's good. But and then most recently, we have this story involving Nova Scotia, where the government of Nova Scotia says that it actually owns the woods, that actually owns the land. And where is this all coming from? Well, this is what we've been saying to people for a long time. We've lost sight of God, and we've looked to government to secure our safety. And it was Benjamin Franklin who said, if you give up a little bit of freedom for the sake of security, you'll end up with neither, no freedom nor security. And that's where we are in Canada today. People in Nova Scotia are not safer because their government claims ownership of the woods, because their government claims that they can ban them from going out and enjoying the public spaces, which is actually charter guaranteed under Section 6 mobility rights. There's no law that says that the government of Nova Scotia owns those woods. But if we surrender ourselves over, if we accept the idea that, oh yes, we must listen to our masters, our worldly masters, because they are our protectors. They are the ones securing our freedom. Then we're lost. Then we are falling into slavery, into thrall, as it said originally in our national anthem. And this goes all the way back to the book of Genesis, because when you consider, what did God say to Adam and Eve? Well, he set them up in this beautiful garden. The garden is like a forest, right? You see the picture. Well, what did God do? God put a tree in the middle of that garden and he said, look, you got this whole garden. It's all yours, right? Don't go near that tree. What was the message? Well, God was saying to man, listen, you're free. You are made in my image. And that's why you have importance. You have importance because you're made in my image. We have inherent value because we're made in the image of God, the Imago Dei. But we are not absolutely free. We are beholden to God. We have to live by his laws. And when we don't obey his laws, right, the wages of sin are death. Okay. And slavery is a form of death, right? It's a form of death. But here's the thing. People ask the question, why did God put that tree in the garden? Well, because with freedom comes responsibility. If you want to have freedoms, you got to exercise them responsibly. You've got a duty. You've got to obey the laws, not the laws of men, which restrict you and bind you and enslave you, but the laws of God, which accept your inherent freedom, but place a responsibility on you to conduct yourself according to his laws. So this comes back to the whole issue that you guys that we talk about in your show all the time about how losing sight of God, we're at the same time we're losing our freedom with that, because God is the source of our freedoms, not the state. And what Benjamin Franklin was saying, there's always this tension between security, safety, and freedom. But what God said to Adam and Eve, it says, look, you're free. You have choice. You have free will, but exercise it wisely. Exercise it according to my laws, or else something bad's going to happen. And that's the essence of our freedom. And so coming back to the province of Nova Scotia, why not set reasonable rules for your conduct while you're in the forest, right? Why doesn't the province of Nova Scotia actually take care of that forest? Because that's the real cause of the forest, guys. That was the real cause of the terrible fire in Jasper we discovered, was that our provinces, that our federal government and our provinces are not actually taking care of these forests and removing all the debris and brush, and that's the real cause of the fires. So it's lazy governance, but more importantly, it's opportunistic governance. We're in a situation in Canada right now where we've handed over our freedoms. We've surrendered them to the state. We've put them in the place of God instead of having God at the head of the state. And then we see what happens. Whenever that has happened throughout history, the same thing has happened, and that is you've had tyranny, because men are tempted to tyranny. That's one of the three temptations that the enemy offered to Christ, if you remember. That's one of the great temptations of human existence, is to tyrannize and exercise power over our brother. That's why Jesus says we have to love our neighbor, even our enemies. And so this is what we're seeing play out in real time in Canada. It's this loss of connection to God, and it's resulting ultimately, I think, in the loss of our freedoms. And the antidote, as always, is for people to understand the state doesn't grant our freedoms. They're not the source of them. It's God. And we have to make the state beholden to that God. Otherwise, we can never and will never be free in this country.
You know, one of the things that you mentioned, which is true about the forest or the woods, I walk in a woods every day, about 6 kilometers, and experience on a regular basis where trees fall over onto the trail. And so then a crew has to come along with a chainsaw, and they have to cut the tree up and basically clear the trail so that people can walk or ride bikes on the trail. The problem is they cut up uh, the tree in almost any length or whatever, and they just throw the remainder of what they cut up in the bush beside the trail. And of course, that's what starts to develop into the
It's
fire
it's
trap.
kindling. Yeah,
That's
it's
right.
kindling.
It's kindling. And we have it in the downtown Edmonton, in the Mud Creek ravine. We have it here
Hmm.
in Calgary. I don't walk Fish Creek, but it's probably the same. You probably have it in Nova Scotia and all around. You've got to take that tree that fell over and haul it out. Now, what you do with it, I don't know, but you got to haul it out, not just cut it down
Yeah.
and throw the remains in there. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. Now, I just wanted to, I didn't want to correct you.
No, please do, because I'm not a
I
pastor.
don't
You
want, I
are.
don't want to correct the lawyer, but um, God, why did He put that tree in the garden? And I've always used it. The reason why God put that tree in the garden and said, don't touch it, is because God wanted to give us choice
Right.
and not
Yeah.
make us robots.
That's the responsibility part. I didn't explain that
Right.
properly, but I agree with you. Yeah.
Right. Because he could have made us robots and we do what says, and no, we wouldn't even know what choice or freedom was. In
Hmm.
essence, the
Hmm.
premier of Nova Scotia, that's what he's doing. He's not giving anybody
Right.
a choice. He's not
Yeah.
Yeah.
asking anybody to make a decision. He's just saying, no, this is closed, stay out, or you're going to get fined $25,000.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
interesting thing is that I mean, there is a difference between Eastern Canadians and Western Canadians. And I
Yes.
found this out a long time ago. Eastern Canadians are very polite and want to be very obedient to the government and everything else. And Western Canadians are a little more gruff and kind of like, I'm going to do what I want to do. You go jump in the lake, kind of a thing, right?
Hmm.
So there's a difference between people and personalities.
Hmm.
Well,
But I always wonder about this Sean guy, and I'll be quiet after this. Why is the government shutting down a Christian musician? Why?
Yeah. Hmm.
What's he going to do? Is he going to
Well,
break any
he was
windows? Is he
divisive
going to?
and controversial, right?
I'll tell you
That's
what.
what they said.
I'll tell you why they shut it down. They're afraid of the message,
Yes.
and the
Yeah.
message is truth. And the
Yeah.
problem is when you speak the truth, you uncover the lies. So they don't want people showing that what they believe or say is a lie. So what they got to do is shut up the truth.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's what's happening.
Yeah. Well, and the proof of that is there was a very radical imam who started a tour at the end of July. He's touring around Canada. He has a very strict Sharia view of life, very anti-Western culture, and stone cold silence. The media doesn't comment on this. He's not having any problems with his tour dates. So it seems there's something particular about Christianity that governments in Canada find very, very dangerous and objectionable, controversial, and to the point where it has to be suppressed. But of course, it's a very dangerous time. They're sort of bellwethers in any society for when things are really, really wrong. One of them is anti-Semitism. If you see the rise of anti-Semitism, that's a sign there's a sickness in your culture. And the second one is suppression of Christianity, dealing with particularly with the West. But interestingly, we were talking about this. Christianity is growing, by leaps and bounds. So the more it is suppressed, the more it grows. And of course, this is by design. This is by
It's growing with
divine.
young men, especially.
Yes, especially. Yes,
But we shouldn't be
absolutely.
surprised. I mean, Jesus said the world's going to hate you. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
he said it multiple times, and he says, but hey, don't worry about it. They hated me first, and I've overcome the world. And
Yeah,
so, like,
yeah.
we should expect this. And I feel bad for the people of Nova Scotia, only because I've heard some of the stories they went through COVID. They were they are in an abusive relationship with their provincial government. It is
Yes.
abuse, and I don't even know if they understand it, but meaning there's other ways this government can protect the forest and help, with not causing, wildfires. No one's arguing that's not a bad idea. You can do it without stealing people's freedoms. He made everyone a criminal. You go outside, you walk down that path, 25,000. And also we have a snitch line. Call this 800 and report violators. That's one way to do it. There's another way of like, hey, everybody, this is God's earth. We got to share it together. Be responsible. If you are the source that causes a fire, you're going to have to pay $250,000 because of all the resources it's going to cost to put the fire out. Like, make the guy who actually caused the fire the criminal. Why shut everybody down? Get rid of their rights and freedoms. That's my problem. It's the idea, Leighton, and we talked about it. The Nazis did this, Hitler did this,
Yes.
making
Yes.
everybody snitch on one another, kind of a deal. Someone's sees violations.
And how does that accord? You make a great point, Corey, but how does snitching on your neighbor accord with love thy neighbor? Is that how you love your neighbor?
No.
Or so this comes back again at a deeper level. We're seeing the manifestation of the symptoms of the problem, but the real problem is the loss of Christianity. And one of my favorite Christian writers, G.K. Chesterton, put this quite well. He wrote this. He said, "We have lost our national instincts. This is true of Canada, because we have lost the idea that Christendom from what is where the nations came from. In other words, we wouldn't have Canada, we wouldn't have the United States, we wouldn't have nations if we didn't have Christianity." He says, and this is the key part, in freeing ourselves from Christianity, we have only freed ourselves from freedom, right? And this is the problem in Nova Scotia. These people are duped. They're convinced that, they don't see that it's not the state that owns their freedoms, that their freedoms are God-given, and that the state has no right. There should be a huge uproar in Nova Scotia right now. People should be saying, what are you talking about? You can't deny my freedom to go into the woods. The woods don't belong to you. The woods belong to God, and they're here for our use. I'm going to use them responsibly, but you can't tell me that I can't go in the woods. But they've lost the idea of freedom, because the idea of freedom is inextricably linked to Christianity. That's simply true. And people who argue that there's some form of secular freedom or legal freedom outside of the supremacy of God and the rule of law simply don't understand what they're talking about.
I had somebody explain something to me about this that I never understood it before, but I used to drive back and forth to Fort McMurray. We used to have services at a camp up there. And of course, it was during the wintertime, and sometimes there would be some storms, and they would, quote unquote, close the highway. And I remember one time I had to get back to Edmonton, and the highways were closed. And so I drove down the highway and came up to the barricade where the RCMP is at. And I said, you guys are saying it's closed. Is it really closed? Like, is there no way that I can drive on that highway? Now, I know
I'm Alan
Corey's laughing.
Hunsberger.
And he says, well, no, we can't close it. You can drive it, But what we're saying is if you get off the road in a ditch or have some accident or whatever, there won't be any emergency vehicles coming to help you out. In other words,
Right.
you go down this road
You're
at
on
your
your
own
own.
risk.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I said,
fair.
well, thank you, officer, for letting me know. If you don't mind, I'm going to go down the road.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
did.
that's the
And I got to
responsibility part of
Edmonton,
freedom.
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And that's a,
everything was okay. And I
yeah.
thought that was a perfect example.
Yes, it is. I'm glad you raised that story. And that's exactly what that's what the government of Nova Scotia should be saying to people. They should be giving them tools. They should be giving them education. They should be giving them opportunities to exercise their freedom in a more responsible way. And by the way, and the government of Nova Scotia knows this. Nearly all of these fires are being deliberately set by arsonists. And these arsonists, frankly, are being paid by non-government organizations in order to spread the myth of climate change and that climate change is causing these fires. And people who think I'm crazy, go back to listen to Justin Trudeau last summer in the House of Commons talking about from Pinecombe to Pinecombe when he was talking about the Jasper fire. Okay. This is all part of one agenda, folks.
Yeah.
And that's a great example. And that's exactly what government should be saying to people. So, yeah, okay, the woods are there. They're not even considering how this is going to impact people. And they haven't learned a thing from the COVID lockdowns and all the harm that caused to people. What about all the kids that want to go camping and riding their bicycles and doing those things in the woods? What about all of them? This is summertime. We have to freeze all the way through the winter. We have this short little burst of summer that's over in an instant. And now Nova Scotia is basically canceling summer. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And how is that going to impact people? Go read the Douglas Allen report from 2021 that said the lockdowns were the worst mistake, the worst public policy mistake in Canadian history. We know the harms of lockdowns. We've seen it. And so why are they repeating them? Well, because they don't care about the people. The people don't matter. The woods are more important than the people. Think about that.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
not why
and-
God created the woods, is it, Alan?
No, and
No.
it's also his lack of understanding of what is freedom.
Yeah, exactly.
Leighton, we
Exactly.
really appreciate having you on the show. It's been amazing.
pleasure.
We'll definitely have you back. If you want to help support our mission, keep this kind of conversation on the air, we need your support. We're viewer supported. We don't take government funds or special interest groups. It's only because of the generosity of you. You can go to our website, gotalktruth.com, click on donate. Many different ways you can give digitally that way. If you'd like to do it through the mail, you can. Make your gift payable to Heritage Christian Ministries Association and send it to 246 Stewart Green Southwest, Suite 3260, Calgary, Alberta, T3H3C8. All right, Dad, we're out of time. We'll see you guys later.
Love you.